Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. I decided to do a combo episode to get our schedule back on track, and holy cow, is there a lot in this one. Pretty sure this is going to be the longest Yang Daily on record, so strap in and hold on to your butts. We're going in. Starting off with a bang, the Supreme Court ruled today that Trump's attempt to end DACA is unconstitutional. This marks one more in a long list of Trump's actions which have been ruled illegal by the courts. Humanity Forward has another two new official endorsements. One is Alex Morse, who was elected mayor of his town of Holyoke at just 22 years old and is now running for Congress for Massachusetts District 1. The other is J.D. Schulten, running for Iowa's District 4. You can always find out more about the candidates endorsed by Humanity Forward at Humanity Forward's website. Remember that this is the Juneteenth weekend of action. Income Movement has set up a petition aimed at Schumer and McConnell to call on them to support basic income. Bailoutthepeople.com has made itself into an action hub for Black Lives Matter as well as UBI. It's got links to the Juneteenth events, the virtual Poor People's March, the petition, letters, numbers for senators, all that good stuff in one handy place. UNICEF released a cash transfer report today that partially reads as follows, quote, "Universal child benefits are proven to reduce deprivation, improving children's overall well-being, health, education, food security, productivity, and ability to contribute to their societies and economies when they reach adulthood. Investing in children not only changes their lives, but yields high dividends for their communities and for society as a whole. Now more than ever, as the economic fallout of COVID-19 threatens to roll back years of progress in reducing poverty, universal child benefits can be a lifeline. They can protect vulnerable families from deepening levels of poverty and deprivation, and can save countries from catastrophic societal and economic impacts. Universalizing benefits reduces risks often associated with narrow means testing, whereby some families in need are left without financial support, including due to exclusion errors. Universalizing social protection programs such as cash or tax transfers also helps to remove stigma associated with benefit schemes overall. Importantly, the report notes that cash transfer programs do not lead to a reduction in participation in paid work among the working age population. Rather, cash transfers help parents balance the demands of employment with the needs of their families." End quote. This followed right on the heels of the World Bank also weighing in on UBI. Quote, "In a recent post for the World Bank's Jobs and Development blog series, Mikhail Rutkowski stated that COVID-19 highlights the importance of creating universal entitlements to healthcare and income support. He underlines that the crisis is especially challenging for those working informally who are not typically covered by social insurance systems. He also suggests that it is no longer acceptable for low and middle income governments to have fractured social protection systems where most people fall through the cracks. This comes as quite a dramatic shift in ideology for the World Bank, which has been a longtime advocate of poverty-targeted social programming. For years, the World Bank has argued that low-cost programs targeted at the poor offer the greatest benefits to those living in poverty, and that high-cost, inclusive life cycle schemes are not feasible for low and middle-income countries. Yet evidence shows that inclusive schemes have high coverage and minimal exclusion errors, and are very effective in reaching those living in poverty. Furthermore, as they can be accessed by the majority of a population, universal social security programs tend to receive greater public support and more funding and are therefore more politically sustainable. Evidence shows that targeted social security schemes are much more challenging and expensive to implement than universal schemes." End quote. So TLDR, both UNICEF and the World Bank admit that welfare never reached everyone or produced the desired results, and it was expensive, and UBI was the right way to go all along in every respect, including improving the economy and societal functioning. Nice of you all to notice. Furthermore, the Brookings Institute just released a study on what gives people a sense of meaningful work. spanning 30 EU nations between 2005 and 2015. They measured aspects such as income, industry, career advancement, autonomy, hours worked, competence, relatedness, and so on. What they found was that 31% scored relatedness as most important, 22% autonomy, 19% country of residence, and everything else was under 10%. So what does that mean? Well, country of residence is factors relating to the country in which the work takes place, obviously. Some countries have better working conditions than others. Autonomy is about how much agency the worker has, how free they are in planning and executing their work and in choosing their job. Relatedness is about the relationship between the people they work with, including their bosses. Now, what would massively increase relatedness and autonomy both? Oh, right, UBI. When work becomes voluntary, you have far more leeway in choosing what kind of work you do, whether it's traditional employment or self-employment, and what the job is. This obviously increases autonomy big time, especially if you choose self-employment, but it also increases relatedness because you are free to try different jobs until you find the one with people you click with, and because employers will be much more inclined to create positive working environments, which makes for better relations with the boss and also happier coworkers, which makes for better relations with them as well. Unsurprisingly, the study also finds that those who perceive their work as meaningful exert more effort on the job. For example, employees experiencing their work as meaningful are less likely to call in sick and are more likely to participate in trainings to improve their skills. They are also more likely to want to postpone retirement. Productivity, satisfaction, and retention of skilled workers should all be perking the ears of business people. Much like the shorter work week and UBI itself, raising these factors is a win for both sides. Hopping across the pond, Liberal Democrats in the UK just released a new booklet, Build Back Better, edited by the MP, which is a collection of essays from party leaders, similar to one released in 2004, which was influential in pushing the party toward a center-right, markets-based stance. In contrast, Build Back Better, with contributions from more than 40 MPs, members, and supporters, promotes progressive policies such as broadband for all and, you guessed it, UBI. But we're going to need UBI over here too, because as reported by For Tax Fairness, the wealth of American billionaires has skyrocketed by 20% or $584 billion since the start of the pandemic, including 12 billionaires who doubled their fortunes. The real problem here, of course, being that this occurs while the lower income brackets lose wealth, widening wealth inequality drastically further, as has happened in all recent recessions ever since Congress decided trickle down was the way to go. This is not sustainable. It also comes on the back of another 1.5 million filings for unemployment this week, and according to a survey by Apartment List, another 30% of Americans missed their housing payments in June, which is pretty much flat from May, showing that conditions for struggling renters and homeowners has not improved. Klobuchar announced today that she has removed herself from the running for vice president on the grounds that it should be a woman of color. I'm not sad to see Klobuchar go, as she would bring no votes to the party as VP and do little to fill in Joe's weaknesses aside from maybe enthusiasm. However, I have to say that we're leaning very far into identity politics now if the candidates for VP are being limited not only by sex but by race as well. But Joe has already excluded the obvious best choice, so I'm not optimistic regardless. A new poll came out for Kentucky today, similar to the one Booker conducted. It's an online civics survey of 898 registered voters this time in Kentucky, taken from June 13th to 15th, and commissioned by progressive think tank Data for Progress. Sampled individuals were emailed by Civics and responded using a personalized link to the survey at civics.com, so it will have a sample bias of people who are active through email. Hopefully they corrected for that as best as possible. The survey results are weighted by age, race, gender, education, and party affiliation to be representative of the population of registered voters in Kentucky. The margin of error is plus or minus 3.8%, at the 95% confidence level, accounting for the design effect. The demographics are 20% Democrat, 43% Republican, 37% Independent, 52% female, evenly split throughout all age groups, 89% white, with other races not specified, and 72% non-college educated. So first off, this poll was clearly not interested in Mike Breuer. They only included him in the primary polls, not in the general, and not in the favorability. Flashbacks to the presidential race, anyone? But at least they measured him in the primary with the question of who would you vote for. The results there, however, are very similar to Booker's poll, with Mike at only 4%. Booker, however, actually came in ahead of Amy this time, and by a lot. Booker had 44 to Amy's 36%. Now that I can get behind. There are a number of interesting developments here. Many are expected. Mitch does best in the rural setting. It's mostly clear-cut along party lines. Most of the voters like Trump and dislike Biden. And people really hate Amy, even more than they hate Mitch, who is also net unfavorable. It's also very clear that Amy's tried and false strategy of pandering to Republicans by pretending to be one is failing miserably, as she gets no more Republican votes than Booker does. As well, Booker did better than Amy in a head-to-head against Mitch, 38 to 33%. Now on to the surprising stuff. First off, most of Mike's votes by a landslide came from the suburbs, not rural or urban. So while he's right that Booker and Amy are weak in the rural areas, it doesn't appear that Mike has any advantage there at the moment. Booker was actually fairly even across the geographic board. Second, Mike actually got more Republican support than Democrat. This is particularly weird in conjunction with the previous observation. Mike appeals mostly to the older crowd, while Booker appeals mostly to the younger. And people who hate both Trump and Biden really love Booker, likely because they're Bernie types. Those people also really hate Mitch. Between these two polls, I'd say it's pretty clear now that Mike's path to the nomination just isn't there this run, and chances in the general don't matter if you can't get to it. I hope he will support Booker as our only viable candidate. They need to be a team to defeat Mitch. We should also pressure Amy to donate her remaining funds to Booker. Frankly, if he's beating her when she's outspending him by a country mile, she should drop out right now and support the clearly superior candidate, in my opinion. We'll soon see whose goal is really to beat Mitch. The Equal Justice Initiative just put out an artful 6-minute hand-painted video chronicling American Reconstruction following the Civil War and what remnants linger to this day. It's worth a watch both for the information, which should be standard history but isn't, and the artwork. Link in description. LMPD announced the firing of one of the 3 officers involved in Breonna Taylor's death. It's like the justice system suddenly cares about justice all across the country. I wonder what changed after all this time. However, this is one of 3. He's only being fired, not charged, and the big wigs who actually made the decision to invade a woman's apartment, unannounced and without even knowing if the suspect was there, are not on the chopping block. This is the barest hint of justice so far. Having gotten through the entire Herzog-Nadler-Boylan debate now, I'll share my thoughts with you. I think, strangely enough, each of the candidates won the debate in the eyes of their own fan base. Nadler's performance of remaining calm and collected under attack, and telling the youngsters they don't know how the world works and that he's gotten things done, will appeal to older moderates. Boylan's performance, acting the hothead who won't compromise on her progressive principles and who's bringing an aggressive, fiery, no-nonsense energy, will appeal to the radicals. Herzog's performance, a calm, intellectual progressive, bringing new solutions to the table and looking to unite, will appeal to more measured progressives and some younger moderates. Personally, it's clear to me that Nadler, while he talks a good game, is just coasting in Congress. On Yang Speaks, Bregman was talking about how studies show that holding power corrupts the mind over time, making people less empathetic. I see that in Nadler's blasé demeanor. He's not going to fight for anything, he's going to flow with party politics as he has been. Boylan has great energy and passion, but she's using it wrong. She's extremely rude to everyone she disagrees with, which will get her nowhere in a democracy where it's all about consensus. In a job where your power is directly correlated to your ability to build coalitions and find consensus, Skill at constructive communication is at least as important as policy, and Boylan lacks that. She wants to be a dictator, and Nadler was right when he critiqued her as ignoring the fact that there are other people in Congress. She talks like she can make all her dreams come true with a magic wand, but it doesn't work that way. You have to convince people you disagree with and compromise, and she showed no signs of being capable of that to me. She appeals to people who are disgusted with the status quo, and she's good on policy, but without the willingness to actually make progress, she's just empty promises. She'll only add to legislative stagnation by voting against everything that's not her perfect version of how things should be done and rubbing people on both sides the wrong way in the process. Herzog, on the other hand, was too stiff and way too technical for the average Joe to have any idea what he was talking about most of the time. He needs to work on communicating ideas to normal people and bringing the energy up some. He also needs to modify his image because, frankly, he looks like a boy pretending to be an adult. I know that's harsh, but this is politics and it matters. He needs the judgmental people to take him seriously too. That said, he's striking a great balance. He can appeal to both progressives and moderates. He's got the demeanor that Boylan lacks to work with people and find consensus, so I trust that he could actually move us forward. And he's clearly got good ideas. I don't really hate any of these candidates, but Herzog is the one who I believe both wants to make progress and knows how to. He's the winner for actually moving the country forward. On that note, Blair Walsingham had her own debate, which Matt also posted for us, but I haven't had a chance to check out yet. Check it out for yourself below. Kentucky has decided to reduce their number of physical polling stations from 3,700 down to 200 for the upcoming election. Now, I get that COVID is a concern, but they're going to have to be really on the ball with mail-in ballots because, for instance, Jefferson County in Louisville will have one polling place for 616,000 registered voters to share. Georgia, anyone? Mike tweeted today that the reason police brutality has been allowed to run rampant is because Democrats are too in love with unions and Republicans are too in love with police. There's a lot of truth to that, I think. The fight over mask wearing is heating up across the country as civil liberties battle with public safety for supremacy, and tragically, the parties battle it out over an issue that has managed to become politicized. AMC Theaters, for its part, declined to force patrons to wear masks, saying, quote, "We did not want to be drawn into a political controversy. We thought it might be counterproductive if we forced mask wearing on people who believe strongly that it is not necessary." End quote. Jeremy Konindick had an insightful take on this, asking why it's wrong to force people to wear masks for public safety when we already banned smoking in theaters for public safety. The pandemic is certainly more of a threat than brief exposure to smoke, after all. California's Gavin Newsom is considering a statewide mandate for mask wearing in public. This comes as California has recently seen a rise in cases, and many countries are considering local mandates. Florida is faring even worse, back to running out of hospital beds. Apple just announced today their stores there will be closing for a second time. Governor Ricketts of Nebraska, on the other hand, went to the opposite extreme, promising to withhold federal COVID funding from any counties who mandated mask wearing in their courthouses and other offices. So now we have restriction of citizens' access to government resources if they refuse to wear a mask, versus citizens' right to access those resources without undue exposure to a pandemic, versus county rights versus what seems a legally questionable quid pro quo situation. What a mess. Even Arnold Schwarzenegger weighed in on the fun, saying, quote, "It's not a political issue. Anyone making it a political issue is an absolute moron who can't read." End quote. Harsh, Arnold, but I appreciate your candor. Perhaps my favorite quote, though, on the subject comes from Twitter user Pissed Off Made in America, who writes, quote, "If you don't have to wear a mask, then I don't have to wear gloves or wash my hands after scratching my balls while I make your sandwich in a restaurant. It's the same rule set. Don't wear a mask, you will taste my balls." End quote. Hard to imagine a more moving argument than that. I'm convinced. Matt interviewed Yang's notoriously boisterous spokesman, Eric Sanchez. Catch it at the link below. Yang tweeted that he'll be revealing some news on getting paid for your data this Monday. What a tease. Finally, we have exciting news from none other than the one who started it all, the Joe Rogan Experience. While discussing the pandemic, Rogan's guest, Bret Weinstein, professed that he can't believe Biden and Trump are our choices during this time when great change is called for, and he proposed a solution, which was for a center-right and center-left politician to team up and run together as an independent ticket, pledging to govern as a single unit, agreeing on all decisions as much as possible before taking action in office, and trading places after the first term. This is actually really compelling to me. I love the idea of a reasonable progressive and reasonable conservative teaming up and combining the two parties into one party of consensus, the embodiment of true democracy. This is the kind of innovative thinking that we need to get us out of tribal partisanry that is driving our country to insanity and destruction. And it seems to me that it could actually work by pulling large support from both parties, especially in a time where people are sick of partisanship. And it would mitigate the splitting the vote objection because it would be presumably taking support from each side roughly equally. But Bret went on to suggest the candidates as well. For the conservative, he chose Navy Admiral McRaven, whose speech you can view below if you haven't seen it. And for the progressive, Andrew Yang. Rogan immediately followed that statement by saying, "I'm down with that. I like what you're saying now." Andrew Yang has some really good ideas and reasonable ideas across the board in terms of many things, not just UBI, but even law enforcement. He thinks outside the box, he's a brilliant guy, open to anything, end quote. Now, if that ain't glowing praise, I don't know what is. And on a platform like Joe's, that's going to have a big impact. That's how Yang took off the first time, after all. I know Yang is set on not running as independent. He already promised as much, but damn, this is compelling. I really want to see this happen. If not this time, then definitely next. But Bret's correct about how much we need that kind of real leadership right now. If the country goes down the wrong path in this critical juncture, we may never recover. If we take the right path, we could lead the world into a new age of prosperity. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Look into and consider supporting Alex and JD for Congress. Sign the Schumer-McConnell petition. Check out the Reconstruction video and maybe bookmark some of these articles as UBI evidence. Share your thoughts on Yang McRaven. Help advocate for clear, fundamental policy goals for the protests. If you're going out to protest, wear protection, especially on your eyes, head, and throat. If you get arrested while protesting, remember not to say anything without a lawyer. Whatever you choose to do, be wise, be safe, and act with measured purpose toward real solutions. And don't forget to Yang Daily.